welcome to this Football Scotland Hearts fan debate, where we'll be going over the sort of finer points of the Robbie Neilson debate that's sort of raging on with fans at the moment. I'm joined by Laurie Dunsire from the Scarfs Around the Funnel podcast, Adam Kennedy from the Perth to Paisley podcast, and we also, just for a view from outside of the podcasting world, we're joined by Jamie Donoghue as well. So, guys, thanks very much for coming on tonight. How we all doing?
All good.
Yeah,
all good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I was building a cot until about 10 minutes ago, so I can't decide if building flat pack furniture is better than watching Hearts right now. It's probably close.
So as I explained here, we're here to debate the Robbie Neilson in or out that is raging on with Hearts fans at the moment, and maybe shed a bit of light for other supporters on why there is a bit of unrest with the support just now. I think it would be good to start and go around everyone and just get a very rough sort of base opinion of where they sit on it just now. We don't need to go into too much detail to start with. We'll obviously get into that. I think a lot of Hearts fans are either Robbie in, Robbie out, or somewhere in between. So if you could just state quite briefly where you're sitting just now. So I'll start with you, Laurie.
I knew you were going to say that because my face is highest up on the screen here.
You're first in my column.
It's for me, it's not a very quick answer. I'm certainly not Robbie out, and I think for me, part of the big problem is people feel the need to put themselves in one camp or the other. That if you're questioning things, then you're either crazy because we're third, or it's the only thing you can do is get rid of them. Somewhere in the middle, I think there are lots of reasons to suggest that making a change now would be a little bit crazy, and there are lots of reasons to say that Robbie Neilson is achieving right now what he is being tasked with. However, there is the other side of it where there are plenty of things to be concerned about. Lots of recent performances, lots of what we're watching on the field as well, deeper concerns, and maybe just some of results even before our kind of little poor run that we've been on started. So yes, I'm in between. I understand both camps. I think too many people feel the need to go extremely one way or the other, in my eyes. So if there's a fence tonight, I'm going to be perched right on top of it, I think.
I think that's fair, but thanks very much for keeping it brief like I asked there, Larry.
That was brief for me.
Jamie, are you along similar lines? Are you sort of somewhere in between, or maybe leaning towards one way?
I'm more leaning towards Robbie In, certainly until the end of the season. I just don't think, I'm fairly certain they wouldn't help our cause whatsoever by getting rid of him right now. It would just lead to further uncertainty. I said recently that I think he is a victim of his own success, and I think that's fair. Last year, if you'd said, for example, if we'd just scraped the top six and really be fighting for third this season, I think most of us would be pretty happy with that outcome. Of course, now the bar has been raised, certainly by the board. It's been quite vocal that he's to get third, Hearts to get third this season. And he's on track mathematically to do that. And I think, it's right that we stick by that. And then if he doesn't make that, then we can make a judgment call. But for the time being, stick with what we've got and get behind the team, get third place.
Yeah, very much so. And Adam, what's your sort of position on it at the moment as things stand?
I'm towards out, but my concerns are with regards to a potential replacement right now. I don't think there's anybody that is jumping out at us this current minute of time. So I guess I'm somewhere in between, despite my allegiances being more towards my belief that I don't think that Robbie is the man to take us to this quote unquote next level that everybody at the club seems to be chatting about. So I don't think he's that guy personally, but that's just my own opinion.
One of my big concerns, and one thing that always irks at me a little bit, and I felt it last time when Robbie left, I was very much, we're not going to go forward. We're going to be stale. under Robbie Neilson. So when he left first time, I know he didn't get sacked. No, he left. I was never Robbie out. I thought the playing and stuff was ludicrous the first time around, but I was quite pleased. I felt like it was a good time for a change. I thought we needed to try and take a step forward. I was very much talking about next level first time around. After years of absolute horrendous Hearts performances and seasons, and ending in another demotion, relegation, however you want to call it. We were bottom of the table, basically. I know there are a lot of circumstances around that. I'm a bit more wary this time, and the next level thing concerns me because it's very hard to have a next level. I would say the next level is consistently getting top 3 and trying to get some silverware. They're closing the gap, and I don't know why people came out and said that. I wish, I understood it to a degree, like Sir Joe Savage come out and saying it, but Celtic and Rangers are as far ahead of everyone else as they have ever been. Celtic especially. You see the money coming in there. There's no danger anyone's closing that anytime soon. So
I'd rather he'd have said pull away from the chasing pack than have ambitions on closing the top 2, as you say.
Yeah, and I think some people talk about that, and sometimes it's some of the older generation, I think. And there's nothing. Football is just so different now, the landscape, that you can't get close to Celtic and Rangers. And that's not to say that we shouldn't try and improve. I very much feel that maybe Robbie Neilson long term won't be the man to carry us forward, but then managers always have a shelf life. I mean, he's already been at us for longer than a lot of managers ever last. So I think ultimately either a manager is that good that he gets picked up elsewhere, or it turns to shit. And most of the time in Scottish football, it's the latter. A manager's fine until he's not, and it's unlikely that won't come to that fruition at some point. So the next level thing concerns me a little bit, because at the moment, like Jamie said, we are still on course. And I know people hate quoting the past as if, we shouldn't base our expectations on the past, but part of me doesn't understand where some of the expectations of Hearts fans come from. And I include myself in that in the past, in terms of, in over 6 decades, we've managed top 3 finishes consecutively once. And that was under Craig Levein playing, I didn't mind it at the time, but playing some pretty basic kick and run football and accepting. Craig Levein's approach was basically start looking for a draw away from home, get a point away from home, you're fine, win your home games. Away from home, it was brutal to watch under Craig Levein. Apart from that, we've never managed top 3 finishes consecutively since 1960. So there is that we have to temper our expectations a degree, I think. So that's why I think I think talk of him going now is just, to me, is a bit mental, because you're kind of throwing it out there into the ether of. I saw some folks saying put Lee McCulloch in charge. It's like, but Lee McCulloch was horrendous when he got a chance as a manager, and for all
Stephen
we know,
Naismith.
And Stephen Naismith, we just don't know.
Don't get that shout either. Yeah,
you have no idea. And I saw some people talking about his leadership qualities as a captain. He dragged that team and stuff, and I was like, who was our club captain when we were bottom? Well, it was Stephen Naismith, wasn't it? Mm. That dressing room that was absolutely shot and somehow couldn't get Hearts off the bottom of the table. So yeah, to me, that's just desperation shouts. You're just talking about taking a total punt. Hey, maybe it would work. You don't know, but I mean, do any of us have any idea if Stephen Naismith would be a good manager? You just don't, do you?
And I think that's kind of one of the issues I have, really. I think if we're looking to get a replacement, I'm not totally against getting a replacement over the summer, by the way, but I think it's...
No, mean it. No, I'm the same.
Yeah, I think it's only right that, he's allowed to see out the season, certainly. And I just think, any manager coming here and they see, say we got rid of him now, if they see that he was on course to get third, the board had asked to get third, and they think, am I going to have the backing of the board? Are they just going to listen to the fans here in future going ahead? I don't think it'd be that tempting a position to come into for a manager that's on course to do what he did, on course to get what he's asked to do, and then just be given the chop. So I think if we at least leave it to the end of the season, it gives us a realistic timeline to look at other options, certainly, and not just bring in, as you say, what I'd expect to be a lesser version of what we've got now.
Jamie, would you maybe change your mind if Hearts were to lose to St Mirren at home on Saturday? even that game in isolation, or even the next 2 to 3 games? What would you be thinking then?
It's something I've given thought to, but I honestly don't see us losing to St Mirren. I think the run of games we've had have been pretty difficult, and it's like the performances. I'm not going to try and defend them; they've not been great, but I think this is a perfect step for us to go on and win. I know it's kind of a political answer because I'm not really, I'm kind of dancing around the topic. Look, it would push me less towards keeping him there, but again, I know what the game is after it, and I have to say that Robbie's done extremely well against Hibs in recent memory. And if we don't get that extra push by winning at St Mirren, I kind of expect us to do it against Hibs. And I think that's one of the key things that's keeping people like me on his side a bit, is those results against our rivals. You know,
Adam, can I just flip that on to you? If say Hearts win the next 3 games and then pick up decent results after the split and finish third, would you change your stance after that?
Potentially. I think it depends on how sort of commanding the performances are. I mean, Robbie's talking about showing some fight, which is ironic given our performance on Saturday was woeful, to say the very least. I mean, we didn't even throw a punch if we're using that type of terminology. So I don't know. Again, going to Easter Road does concern me because it's been going too well against Hibs recently. I feel like that has to change. And we're talking about the results that he's getting recently. In his second tenure, he has been very consistent against Hibs. However, he's still only won at Easter Road once over 2 spells as Hearts manager. Granted, that was in the Scottish Cup, our last trip to Easter Road. But Hibs looked as though they've picked up since then. I mean, the pressure surrounding Lee Johnson and Jim Goodwin a couple months ago, it's embarrassing to see Aberdeen a point behind us and Hibs, what are they, 5 behind us now?
Yeah, definitely. I'll come to you again, Laurie, just with the same sort of question that I posed to Jamie there. If Hearts are to lose the next 3 games, would you sort of rethink your idea of waiting until the end of the season?
If they lose all the next 3,
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, you're talking about losing to St Mirren and Ross County at home and losing to Hibs in the derby. I mean, there is a point where you can't really come back from, and I would struggle to see a way back. You don't want to just bow to fan pressure for the sake of it, because most football fans are very fickle, and things change in weeks. You know, the end of January, manager of the month, we were talking about, there was articles in the BBC about third is already wrapped up by Hearts, and yeah, don't get me wrong, there were still some maybe underlying problems in some performances, but I think we were very happy with everything that was going on. I think we were delighted with how we'd recovered, given that we went into the World Cup break, what were we, 4 points off the pace, I think?
I think that's right, yeah.
So things do change very quickly in football. I would struggle to see him recover if we lost 3, because that would be 7 defeats on the bounce. And one of the things I would think, and I said this on our podcast this week, that people, and especially the board, might look at is our home form is excellent. And Hearts, whether we probably want to improve this, but Hearts, throughout my time supporting Hearts, right away from home, it's pretty much a given. Hearts have generally been pretty good at home, terrible away from home. That's not a Robbie Neilson thing. That's a Craig Levein, a Robbie Neilson, a Jim Jeffries, every Hearts manager thing. We had a good spell, I think, under Jeffries' second spell, that one season where we had a good run away from home. But generally, Hearts are on the road, especially when you compare to the fact that we're usually okay at home. I think in the last, if you take Rangers and Celtic out, 15 games against the rest, we're unbeaten at home, 13 wins, 2 draws, against a very poor away team in St Mirren. So 2 wins against St Mirren and Ross County, something in the derby, we're still in a reasonably good position. The thing is, momentum concerns me, and right now Aberdeen have momentum. Do you want to be the team a point ahead on a bad run, or do you want to be the team a point behind on a good run and feeling good about themselves? Most of the time you take the latter. My concern, there was some tactical concerns, and I think they're still there. However, my bigger concern right now, the thing that would have me leaning more towards we need to look at making a change at some point, probably in the summer, unless things get really bad, is what we see from the players in terms of attitude and desire. Because, like Adam alluded to, Kilmarnock was woeful, and take away formations or tactics from it, they just looked up for it, and our players did not look interested, apart from Lawrence Shankland, I would say. And that concerns me more, because that starts to go along the lines of, are they giving their all for the manager? And the evidence of Kilmarnock, I mean, look, we'll lose games. You'll always lose games. You'll lose games against teams that you don't want to lose again. That's football. That's Hearts. To quote Robbie Neilson, unless you support certain big teams, that's going to be the life. And that is whether you're, and I think he framed that quote very badly at the time, but I think that what he was trying to suggest is, if you support Hearts, there will be bad runs, there will be bad results. I guess the concern for me is it didn't look like we had the same effort as Kilmarnock. There was an 18-year-old out there making a second league start, and he overshadowed any of our players. To me, that was unacceptable, and that gives me some concerns. And, there's Mark Donaldson said it on our podcast, there are some murmurings that certain players are not giving their all in training, which is why certain players are getting nowhere near the starting 11. It's probably not really hard to work it out. I'm not going to start naming people, but that is evident to me, and that concerns me. And there's things like Snodgrass. Why is Robbie Neilson not seeing that is not working? Since the last time we played, when we played St Mirren away, he's been found out. We can't play. He's a good player, and I don't entirely blame him, because he doesn't pick himself and doesn't decide where he gets picked. I hope not anyway, because then we really have lost the dressing room if he's deciding that. But how is he not seeing that is not working, having Snodgrass sitting deep? I mean, he was terrible at Rugby Park. The fact he was coming out and talking big after the game, that annoyed me, because I thought he was one of, if not the worst out there, if you take the fact that Xander Clark was injured for that second howler. That to me has not been working for a long time. So why is he not seeing that? Devlin was out at the weekend, so you can't talk about him there. Why has Devlin not been in? At Pittodrie, Devlin was sitting on the bench the entire game. That was bizarre to me. We had Snodgrass playing walking football in the middle with Aberdeen playing aggressively and getting in our faces, and Cammy Devlin sat for 90 minutes on the bench. Stuff like that. That's what I have concerns, is where what is the team look a bit lost just now, not just tactically, but in terms of attitude. And that's where you start to get concerns, and that's where you start to look at Aberdeen players under Goodwin. They got to a point where it looked like they were not believing in their manager. Hibs players under Maloney, you started watching games and you were like, they are not playing for that boss, are they? So that concerns me a lot more than any questions about back threes or back fours.
Isn't that my thing is, so perhaps in the first half of the season, the one thing that I think most of us were really happy about was that we seemed to have a team that really fought for one another. The fans were all on their side, and then where's that gone? And yes, you can look at off the field issues, there might be there, but we can only speculate really on that. I just my assumption is that's sort of what happens when you're a bad run of results. People tend to lose interest, their heads go down. If we manage to get a couple of wins together, my suspicion is we'll start to see a team that plays for one another again. And I can understand there's probably an argument, well, that's Neilson's job to really pick them up when they're down. But again, we can only speculate on what's happening behind the scenes. I think, another reason I really want to keep with him was because of that feel-good factor we had in the first half of the season. And we did seem to have that team, that collective effort that all really played for one another. And, I wouldn't have, throughout the season, I don't think we've really played great. There's been some great results, but again, performance-wise, you could probably count them on one hand if you're lucky. But again, we always had a team that really seemed to fight to get that win. He managed to get that a few months ago. Why can't he get it now? And I think perhaps the answer to that is he managed to string a good couple of results together, and we'll see a bounce back. That's certainly my hope anyway.
Yeah, I was going to say, Robbie does have a good track record of digging out results when he needs them, or galvanising the team again and getting them through tricky patches. So is that another argument for him? Is it another reason to stick with him and not take the risk of going with an interim manager or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's look towards the result that I don't even want to talk about, Brora. And when we lost that one, everyone said he had to go, including myself.
Yep, me too, yeah.
He just, there didn't seem any positives to that. But I mean, look at the bounce back from that, and that's not even close to where we are now. We're in that not bad a position. The performances have been poor, but really, I mean, we're literally leagues away from where we were there. So I wouldn't be surprised to see, us really pick up a bit of steam after a win or two. Fingers crossed.
Do you think the sort of Robbie out campaign was worse after Brora than it is now? Is it getting to that level now, or is it not quite there?
I think it was absolutely worse after Brora, and rightly so, because Hearts will lose at Pittodrie and Rugby Park plenty of times again in the future. They've lost it plenty of times in the past. Losing to a non-league side for the first time in our history, that is that is a sackable result. And I think you can say I think they were right to keep him, but I think if they'd got rid of him, I don't think anyone would, no matter what happened afterwards, I think people would have probably still said it was the right move, because that is a potentially sackable result. Losing to Kilmarnock in itself is not a sackable result. Losing to Aberdeen is not a sackable result. The ongoing sort of malaise around the team and the inability to change certain things, that concerns me a little bit. The way that the back three just wasn't working, and there just seemed to be so much gaping holes in that everyone could see apart from Robbie Neilson. That concerned me. The Barry Mackay just ineffective nature and inability to take him out of the team, that affected me, and lots of fans, because it seemed so obvious. And the Snodgrass thing now is the one for me where I just don't see how it works in our current setup, playing him in that deep role. He has dug us out, and I think his track record is very good. When you compare it to other Hearts managers have done. Even take the championship out, because I know everyone will say it's a championship, and quite rightly, it's a lot of part-time teams in there, but he's finished third in both seasons he's had with us, top flight. So he has a track record of getting results. He has improved many things this time around. I know people questioned his Derby record, and he's very much improved that. It's obviously a very big thing at Hearts. Robbie Neilson knows that. The fans know that. So his record's been very good against Hibs this time around. So there is still room for improvement. One thing I find quite interesting, and this has frustrated me a little bit as well. I say I'm very much on the fence here. I understand the calls for his head. Recruitment, and again, this is some revisionism here, because in January I think a lot of us thought it's some quite good business. I always get this impression that when a signing works out, Joe Savage gets all the credit. It's not the credit to Robbie Neilson for how he coaches them and puts them in the team. When a signing doesn't work out, it seems to be on Robbie Neilson, and that really does seem to be quite widespread. That if a player turns out to be shit, there never seems to be much talk about Joe Savage. And like Robbie Neilson, I think he's done plenty of good things, but has our recruitment been that good now in hindsight when you look at it for this season? In January, when we all spoke about, right, January's going to be massive for us. Very tough first half of the season. A lot of injuries. The team are struggling. We need to come up trumps in January. Have we done that based on who we brought in?
No. And I think for me, the one gaping area that's been evident all season long is right wing back. Michael Smith cannot
That's my
play
right,
forever.
by the way. It looks left in the screen.
Yeah,
That's my right.
I figured. But Michael Smith has been a wonderful servant for Hearts. Brought up from Peterborough, a low-risk signing. Nobody knew who he was. Fantastic footballer. Genuinely filled in here, there, and everywhere. I can't say a bad word about the guy. But Hearts in the past have been accused of being too sentimental at certain points. And I think we're seeing this with Michael Smith. Nathaniel Atkinson's not hit the heights that some suspected he would. Again, seems all right offensively. There's always been question marks defensively. And Hearts seemed so adamant to re-sign Callum Patterson in the January transfer window that the minute that didn't happen, they hadn't really identified anybody else for that particular position. It was either Patterson or bust. And needless to say, Callum Patterson has not returned to Gorgie, and so we're feeling the full effects of that at present.
Yeah,
So-
do you think they maybe just thought they can revisit Patterson in the summer and sort of just get away with it till then, and then it's not really worked out?
Well, because his contract's up at Sheffield Wednesday, isn't it? So that expires in the summer. I see talking Nicky Devlin as well. I think both are viable options, given Michael Smith will most likely leave the club, I'd assume, in the summer. And again, there's murmurs with Nathaniel Atkinson whether his long-term future is in Edinburgh or elsewhere, potentially back home. I don't know. So if you traded me right here, right now, Michael Smith and Nathaniel Atkinson out for Callum Patterson and Nicky Devlin in, I think most Hearts fans would take that as a start.
So here's a question. So recruitment this summer, and really recruitment, and I've always maintained recruitment should be both credit and criticism at both Robbie Neilson and Joe Savage, because it's between the two of them. Joe Savage finds the targets and Robbie Neilson kind of has his say on which of the targets he fancies, and between the two they kind of thrash it out. So Alex Cochrane was an existing player, obviously went from a loan to a permanent signing. My understanding is Lawrence Shanklin was very much a long-term target in relationship with Robbie Neilson. That came about rather than, from what I understand, Kai Rolls was not a Savage find. I can't remember on the rest of them. There's some that are highlighted from elsewhere, but look at the rest of them. Alan Forrest, Lewis Neilson, George Grant, Orestes Kiramitsoglou, Stephen Humphreys, Xander Clark, Robert Snodgrass, James Hill, Yutaro Oda, Garan Kual. Now, with how things are going just now, is the criticism should be aimed at both Neilson and Savage, given those incomings? Have they improved us to the point of being stretching the gap away from the teams below us? I think we've got a much bigger squad than last season. We've got more depth. Have we got more quality, though?
Probably not. No. I mean, we're 5 points worse off this season in comparison to last, and I know that everybody else has simultaneously got better, or the argument is that they've got better.
Aberdeen anyway, yeah. Hibs are worse off as well than last season, I think by 3 points or something.
So, yeah, I guess not. Hindsight's a wonderful thing now, though, isn't it?
Yeah, because things I was saying in January, when Clifford signings first came in, was like, oh, on paper, we've got ourselves in a good position here. 5-0 wins against Aberdeen, 2-3-0 wins against Hibs. Obviously, maybe clouds your judgment a little bit. But
as you say, manager of the month off the back of that, it was looking swell.
But looking back now, and I mean, we've obviously had a lot of bad injuries, but Shanklin and Rolls have been the big plus points. If you take Cochrane out, because we knew about him already, he was just making a deal permanent, and I don't believe that they were kind of new finds from Savage specifically. So I guess that I think there's a lot of questions to be asked about a lot of areas, about recruitment, about the coaching, and about players. And I think Saturday will tell us a lot, because this is a massive game now, and there'll be a lot of pressure at Tynecastle for that game against St Mirren. And unfortunately, the way you look at it, although the board won't want to bow to fan pressure, it does start to impact things. If Tynecastle becomes very, very negative, it starts to spill out onto what's going on in the field, I think, and it can affect performances.
That first goal is just going to be so important on Saturday, I think, and I see it could become incredible. I think I'm expected to be quite hostile anyway, but getting that first goal could make the difference between, a win or a loss. It's also coming back to the signings, and I just sort of you wonder with that Patterson non-signing, how much of that was how much that could have impacted our season, and also just how much of that was Neilson's fault, that we didn't actually get that over the line. I remember reading, I think, or actually hearing they put in 2 bids for that, and my thought is, there must have been some almost certainty that we'd get that over the line, because it is just, you both mentioned it is just such a glaring weakness in our team, and we had quite a lot riding on that, and I'm just where does the fault lie with that? And I'll be interested to see come the summer, if Neilson's still there, what the recruitment's going to be like then, and who's going to go as well, because we've got, as you mentioned, we've got quite a bit of depth, but do we need further depth than that, or is it just getting rid of a few folk now? And the people you might want to get rid of now has changed so dramatically since the winter break. There's always talk of getting Snodgrass on a 2-year deal. I mean, you have to admit now that seems like quite a good bit of business, not giving a contract back then. So and I also think, weirdly, I think there's some sort of, I think you have to give credit to people for not bowing down and signing giving out the contracts at times like that, and being able to wait that bit longer and really see how they're doing a few months down the line. And I think, it's little things like that I think Neilson might miss out on the credit for, sort of wee odd bits like that.
Yeah,
it's funny you say that about loanees, because I was just thinking Josh Ginnelly initially arrived from Preston on loan. Then we turned that into a permanent deal. The same has been said for Alex Cochrane. And yet there's been several other loanees that haven't quite hit the heights as of yet. I wonder if perhaps, and this is just an example, given the way that things have gone recently, Stephen Humphreys has been injury plagued a fair bit. Would that be the only thing that might prevent us from making that move permanent in the summer? I think we've actually been pretty smart in terms of instantly not identifying these players and then signing them up, dishing out contracts left, right, and centre willy-nilly, but seeing what happens, give them that little sample of hearts, see how they do, and then make the decision and go, yeah, we'll have him, or no, you're all right, we'll identify somebody else and we'll move on.
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, the two that
wages could be an issue with Humphreys as well, I think.
Well, exactly. So wages and his injury record goes against him even more so if he's demanding big dough.
I mean, the two loanees to me are just that we got in January are just such bizarre ones. I can't really defend them, Niels, on this point, because Hill, I feel we've already got better options there already. I mean, he looked really impressed in the first game or two. I'll give him that. But it's just been such a downward trajectory after that. And Kuhl, what's even the point of him being there? Is it to use our training facilities? Because that's kind of all it feels like at the moment. I have to imagine Newcastle got better ones than us.
Yeah, the thing with Kuhl as well, and I think I posted on Twitter recently, 4 senior starts in football before we signed him, and that's in the A-League. Now, I watch a bit of the A-League. I quite like it. It's entertaining. It's a step up going from Central Coast Mariners to Hearts, though, especially with how organised defences are in this league compared to the A-League. So, yeah, maybe I bought into it a little as well, but I think all fans are guilty of that. But has he looked now playing him in central midfield? That was ridiculous. I mean, that's on Robbie. That game was utterly bizarre. But take that away, when he has played, has he shown anything to suggest that he'd be worthy of a start? For me, he's not. To me, he's barely looked interested.
Yeah, and Sorry. I was just going to, I mean, really, I remember one brief moment was he almost scored like a bit of a fluke goal. That's kind of the only highlight of his I can really remember.
Missed a sitter at Livingston. That's what I was going to say. That's
another one, yeah. The 2 highlights of his Hearts career thus far. But, I remember mentioning on your podcast, Laurie, the 18-year-old that played for Kilmarnock, who just, made Snodgrass in particular look very average indeed. Kuhl's about 18 as well, right?
He is, yes. He's 18.
It's not that. I feel we must have signed him on the idea that he'd get more game time than this. There was talk that we'd ease him into the team, but there's been no sign of that whatsoever. I just find it a really bizarre situation, to be honest.
And we've got Connor Smith out on loan.
Yeah.
Finlay Pollock hasn't been obviously got much of a look in. We've got other players who, other teams have just had to throw players in. They've done pretty well. So sometimes I'm looking at what's going on out there and I see an 18-year-old playing for Kilmarnock in his second league start. I'm like, he's running rings around our midfield and showing the energy and the fight that we want. I'm not suggesting that suddenly throwing 18, 19, 20-year-olds in is the answer across the board, but sure as hell seems a better option than just playing the same 35-year-old in a position that just isn't working week in, week out, week in, week out.
Yeah, and I think it's.
I'm just going to have to jump in there, boys. There's 2 minutes left on the Zoom because I'm too cheap to pay for a.
Shocking.
I'm going to have to wrap it up there. Unfortunately, it's been a good discussion. I thought it might be good to end with a sort of quick fire question for each of you. So I'll start with Laurie. Laurie, where will Hearts finish this season?
Where will we finish this season? Third, I hope.
And will Robbie Neilson still be the Hearts manager at the start of next season? And should he be?
I asked this question in the podcast. If we finish third, I think he will be the manager next season, and he probably should be, based on that being his remit. I start to maybe have my doubts about that is the right answer, but it probably should still be the right answer. Very, very vague. Sorry, yeah.
That's all right. And Jamie, where do you think Hearts will finish this season?
Well, I think definitely top 6, but no, I think I'm quite
We're staying up.
I think we'll scrape third, to be honest. I do think we'll string some results together, manage to get by in third. And to answer the other parts of your question, yeah, if he gets third, he's got what he's, they asked for him. I think he should stay on that contract and at least start the next season. I'd like to see who he gets in the summer as well.
Adam, your prediction for a league finish?
Better be third, and if it is, it'll probably be because we've had Tynecastle fixtures aplenty.
And will Robbie Neilson be the Hearts manager at the start of next season?
Probably. I get the impression he will be regardless.
Sound delighted at that.
Nice one. Well, just as I say, we'll have to wrap up there. So thanks again to you all for joining us. That's been a very good discussion. And thanks to everyone who ends up viewing this as well.